What is a dark secret you are hiding from everyone? Not a huge secret in comparison to some of these answers, but I feel the guilt of it often. After my fiancée passed away, I napped all the time for over a year. My aunt was calling me one day and I just denied her call, and I went back to napping. It was my aunt calling because my grandma, who was very sick with cancer, wanted to say happy birthday a day before my birthday. My grandma died the next day. I should have picked up the damn phone. My stepdad tried to kill me when I was little. My stepdad was a grade A butthole. He was in my life from the beginning, from after my biological dad left, up until I was about 13 to 14 years old. He was an abusive, alcoholic, jobless dingwad who physically and verbally abused both my mom and I. On multiple occasions, either my mom or I called the cops and I watched them drag the sorry sack of crap out the house and throw him in jail for a couple of days. Those were, sadly, the happiest days of my childhood. When I was little, I can remember countless times where I had gotten into physical fights with the man, resulting in black eyes, cuts, bruises, the works. I won't go into detail any further since it's kinda hard to talk about, but I will say this. I never told anyone about this. This is the first time I've gotten it down in writing or out in the open at all. When I was little, 5 to 6 years old, I lived with my mom and stepdad in my stepdad's parents' attic. My mom frequently went out during the day for work and didn't come home until late evening or night. Well, one day, after my parents had a pretty hostile argument, my mom left for work and my dad was pretty pent up. This is what I remember and continue to remember almost every day since the event. My dad took one of those large, heavy-duty trash bags out of his parents' kitchen, dragged me into the living room of the attic, stuffed me in the bag, and tied it after letting out some air. I remember being terrified, too scared to act out of fear of getting hit or yelled at. I waited until I heard him close the attic door, then proceeded to use my fingers to claw a hole through the trash bag. I remember it taking a while, since I wasn't that strong at the time due to malnourishment and, well, my age. But I eventually made it out, and I laid on the floor just waiting for my mom to get home. I don't know if she knows what happened, if she just thought I was playing with a trash bag or what, but that's what I remember, and I've been carrying it for years. Thankfully, she eventually left that dirt bag, and I can now happily say I have an amazing father who I love very much, so this story does have a happy ending. Dude, what in the actual f***? This is pretty nuts, but I'm glad OP and Mum got out. I'll never be able to fully understand why people stay in abusive relationships like OP's mum, but I guess it's because they feel trapped with no way out. And I've heard from many people that it is not usually always abusive and that it's like a cycle. So the abused person experiences the happy stage and it gives them hope for change. But eventually, the abuser will revert back to abuse and the cycle goes on. I'm glad they got out, but the trauma will live with this poor person forever. I think writing things down and telling someone is sometimes the best way to relieve yourself of built-up trauma. Last Christmas, I learned that my sister and I don't have the same father, and we are technically half-sisters. My sister's biological father tried to start a relationship with my mum. That resulted in a pregnancy and ultimately didn't work out. That biological father is dead now, but I didn't probe any further about his identity or how he died, in case it was something traumatic for my mum to remember. So she raised my sister as a single mother at my grandma's house in the 80s. Then she met my father and they started dating, and it worked out. They got married in the 90s, moved into a new house, and a short time after that, I was born. She told me to never call my sister my half-sister, and just pretend all of this doesn't matter because she's my sister, and I'm keeping it that way. If anyone asks about the 10-year age gap, I just tell them it's a long story. These types of stories always make me want to do a DNA test, just to make sure I wasn't born from some weird love triangle or something. You never know, right? When I was a teenager, I worked at a novelty tourist shop near me. Being the idiot that I was, I stole a wad of cash from the store. It was $100 in ones. I didn't tell anybody, but they knew it was missing. Right about the same time, a co-worker who was always trying to get me fired was telling someone she got about $100 in tips from her other job. They ended up firing her because they didn't trust that it wasn't her. Not super dark, but mine is also stealing from my employer. It was a seasonal job, and they told people if they came back next season, they'd get a raise. Next season, I got a 50-cent per hour raise and mentioned it to a couple other people who had also returned, but they did not get a raise. They went and complained to the boss, who then took my raise back and gave them each 25-cent raises. I argued with the boss for a bit, but eventually just decided I'd steal a few bucks per shift to make up the difference. Well, damn, I wouldn't have told anybody these secrets either, because they'd probably get fired and possibly do a little jail time. The person who got another person fired, though, that guilt would stay with me until I die. This is random, but after I finished watching that show, Lucifer, I've been convinced that I need to rid myself of all guilt before I die or I'm going to hell. I know it's absolutely ridiculous, but you never know, right? When I was young, probably around age 9 or 10, I was walking home with my dog from a house around the block when he cut the corner and walked diagonally through the yard of this super mean old lady who lives at the end of everyone's street. She was in her yard at the time, tending to these really fancy looking rose bushes she had growing in beds along the border of her neighbor's yard. My dog was a very friendly golden retriever who didn't even really come near her and certainly didn't do anything threatening, but she sprayed the frick out of him with some kind of insecticide or other chemical she was using on her roses. I ran back home with the dog and hosed him off. He coughed a bunch, but seemed otherwise fine. I didn't tell my parents because somehow I thought I was going to get in trouble for letting the dog walk in her yard. I'm glad I didn't tell them though, because I decided that night to sneak downstairs out the bathroom window and down the street to her yard, where I cut down every damn rosebush I could get my hands on. Hell yes! A little bit of petty revenge, but this is well deserved by the old lady. I mean, if you're going to be mad at something, be mad at the human. The dog literally has no clue that it doesn't belong there and is innocent. When I was younger, I lived with my grandmother. Not long after I turned 18, her health started to decline. The sort of decline that you all know means she won't be around for much longer. Over the months, I did my best to take care of her, like getting her to the hospital when she needed and other things. We had someone coming every day to help her with stuff that I couldn't help with. Well, what my family doesn't know is that the night she passed, I was in the living room watching TV. My dog was in bed with my grandma, and I started to hear him whimper and bark. I knew what was happening. I knew that if I acted, I could potentially save her. I didn't want to watch her suffer anymore though, to watch her live with so much pain and unable to do anything for herself anymore. So I made the choice to let her pass before making any calls. She lived 92 years. And the only regret I have is that she passed a month after I would have graduated if I hadn't been kicked out of school. She had been in good enough health at the time to go to my graduation. I still kick myself for how stupid I was back then. I'm not too torn up about letting her pass. I knew it was for the best. She was such a great person, and she didn't deserve to live in such a poor manner any longer than she already had. I don't regret what I did. I regret what I had done that got me kicked out of school and that I didn't try and make it to graduation for her. I think I've lived my life so far in a way that she'd be proud of. Not graduating before she passed is the only regret I really have in this life so far, and I'm 35 now, so I think I'm doing pretty good. I can't really judge this situation since I've never been a caretaker or had to be around someone every day who is dying. I just hope that this person's grandma did not die, thinking that someone was going to come and save her. I hope she was ready to go and that she passed away as peaceful as possible. I know a lot of people might not agree with me, but I really think it should be the dying person's choice if they are able to make a choice. They also didn't mention if they at least went into the room with their grandma to hold her hand or something. It seems kind of a cold way to go about this if they just stayed in the living room, watching TV while their grandma was dying in another room. I had an irritable bowel syndrome attack once and had to violently crap at church behind someone's car. I used underwear to wipe it too, and I left that there, not proud of it. I had this in high school. I managed to clean up any trace and nobody found out. Nobody knew, except my father, who was unusually helpful. He understood me and supported me and never talked about it again. It was my darkest secret half of my life, but then I understood that it's natural and that I've made good decisions. I have nothing to be shameful about. And also, I have way darker secrets now. I'm pretty sure a large amount of people have a story about crapping their pants at some point in their life. The real question here is, why was the father so unusually helpful when it came to crapping your pants? How many times has this man crapped his pants?